Good morning, everyone. It's November 9th, first meeting of the Infrastructure and Economic Development meeting. Our members, voting members, are myself, Mike O'Connor as chair, Gladys Blackmore, John Laners, and Mayor Jackie Clayton. Anyone wishing to attend or speak as a delegate must contact Legislative Services at admin@cityofgp.com to submit their presentation in advance. Delegates have the option of attending in person or via remote access. We'll call the meeting to order. As there are no delegations this morning, we'll go. Okay. Thank you. As there are no delegations that I can see in the queue, we'll go to reports 3.1, and we'll get a presentation from Connor Coney.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Mayor, members of Council. I'm going to defer this to Monty Hoyen. He is the business ambassador for the Downtown Rehab Phase 4.
Good morning, Chairman, Mayor, Council and Committee. Yeah, there was a little mix-up with my time frame, and we thought Connor would be presenting, but I am in the chair as the business administrator, so I will be presenting. So this morning will be the final update for the 2021 Downtown Rehabilitation Phase 4, which took place on 100th Avenue between 100th Street to 98th Street this past year. Present at today's meeting are Brian Morrison, Manager, Grande Prairie from ISL Engineering and Land Services. ISL were the engineering consultant for this project. Tom Hill, Grande Prairie and Region Construction Manager from Knelson Sand and Gravel, the prime contractor on this project. Status of the site. The site is completely hard surfaced as of Friday, November 5th. A seasonal shutdown meeting will be happening on Wednesday to determine the handing over to the work zone to the city for winter maintenance until Knelson resumes work in 2022. This past year, the sanitary service was oversized and it had a 1938 vintage. 30 services were installed, including 3 vacant lots. The water services were oversized. They had a 1975 vintage, and 34 water services were installed, including 3 vacant lots. And storm service was extended into both blocks to increase drainage in the area. The roadway was improved, sidewalks widened, and so that was, to this point, Block 1 is substantially complete. Remaining work for next year. With the seasonal shutdown, at this point, all underground electrical conduit, irrigation, and soil cells are constructed and in place for resumption of work in 2022 in Block 2. Block 1 is, like I say, substantially complete. The sidewalk areas in Block 2 were paved with asphalt so as to provide a hardened surface until spring. This pavement will be removed in the spring of 22 and replaced with concrete base and paving stones. Landscaping, the trees and shrubs will be installed next year. Also on Block 2 between 99th Street and 98th Street, seat walls, sidewalk paving stones, and street furniture, and permanent line painting throughout the entire work zone will be completed next year. Work in the spring is not anticipated to require a full road closure, just single lane. So that is the update for what has happened to date for the end of the construction year on the downtown. I'm open to any questions.
Are there any questions from council? Seeing none. Anything online? Nothing online. Okay. Wendy Bosch. Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. With these delays for 2022, is Knelson held under any kind of policies in regards to penalties since this entire job wasn't complete?
Can I defer this to Connor?
Sure, I can answer. Thanks, Councillor Bush. Typically, the contract would determine the any damages for delays or liquidated damages. So we're all aware that it wasn't completed on the date, substantially completed on the date listed in the contract. So we will be assessing those at the end of the job. And that is, sorry, I was meant to go to chair. That was that is typical, I guess, in these types of construction jobs. Yeah, apologies. I was meant to go through the chair.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Bosch?
Well, I don't think it answers any questions because it's an unknown. So I look forward to seeing what the results are of what the contract states and what the downtown is in for 2022.
Thank you. Councillor O'Toole.
Yeah, this is for Knelson. Just wondering, we are going to be having to do this in the spring. Do you have an approximate time that when it would start? I know what's weather depending, but is there like 3 months worth of work, or is there like 6 weeks worth of work when it starts?
Thank you to the chair. Thank you, O'Toole, obviously, for the question. Again, my name is Tom Hill with Knelson Sand and Gravel. It is anticipated, weather permitting, we will mobilize the site May 9th of 2022 to resume operations on the downtown block 2 with removals, concrete placement, and brickwork. If all goes well, we are looking at a July 29th completion date. That will give us substantial time to go in and complete the remaining work. And again, I'm being a little cautious with these dates this time of year, as I don't want to overestimate the timeline. So I do want to be realistic. So we still are anticipating 60 days of work next season.
Okay, thank you very much. That answered my question.
Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair O'Connor. Question for Knelson or Connor, whoever's appropriate. In regards to the timing, I heard you say May 9th, so it's fair to say that this job completion will be the first job out of the gate. I know that you'll have a lot of new jobs by that time next year, but the priority will be to complete this job, correct?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor Clayton, for the question. 100% absolutely, this will be and remain Knelson's highest priority. I'm saying May 9th based on statistical start dates. If we can get in there earlier and weather conditions allow, then we will anticipate and absolutely get in as early as we can. And this project will be of the utmost priority and will be the first out of the gate for Knelson with multiple crews and our subcontractors.
And the focus will be completion, right? I mean,
the focus will be completion as quick as possible without compromising quality.
Perfect. I just would like to not, I'd prefer to not see crews pulled off to start other jobs. And I appreciate your commitment to completion. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions? John Lainers. Councillor Lainer.
Thank you, Chair Mike. Just curious as to what the original intent was the schedule to be completed this fall, and if so, what was the delays? Because we had a reasonably good construction season this year, so one that would at least anticipate during a construction schedule. So what were the delays that we can tell people caused the carryover to next year?
Just wondering who would like to answer that question. Tom, would you like to?
Yeah, I can take it. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, John Lenners, for the question. Obviously, the complexity of the project, it was a fairly large project, very complex, different scopes, a lot of coordinating different subcontractors. The weather has been absolutely incredible this season. Unfortunately, due to some of the minor changes and some additional work, as well as just the sheer complexity, it takes a little bit of time and everything had to flow. So really, there's not a lot of excuses besides just it took a little bit of time, took a little longer to complete specific tasks.
Okay.
And I think obviously with where we're at in this season, ultimately, if the road remained closed, we would still be pushing forward heating and hoarding. But as the construction group and wanted to realize the retail business, we had to open the road back up. Therefore, went into winter shutdown, maybe a little sooner than we would have liked to. But I think that only benefits the local businesses downtown.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lenners. Councillor Bosch.
Thank you through the chair. You're right. There is phases 1 through 3 that were done previously. How are the components to phase 4 so different than the other phases? I believe Knelson was aware of what they were getting into. Can you answer to that, please?
Connor, do you want to answer to that about the difference in the 3 phases previously?
Through Mr. Chair, I see Christine Donnelly stand up. Is that correct, Christine?
Oh.
Go ahead, Ms. Donnelly.
Thank you, through the chair. You know what, I think that phase 1 and 2, we did have construction over a 2-year period. And phase 3, although it was a 1 year, it was a smaller scale. We stopped short of the 100th Street intersection. So phase 4 was more complex than 3, not as complex as 1 and 2 far size and scale, but when we went into this, I think we did realize it would be a challenge to meet the timeline, but our goal was to do it, and we did get quite a bit done, I think, but it did end up going over.
Okay, Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair O'Connor. Just a reminder, and maybe for those of you who are new, heading into this construction season, we were very aware that this was an ambitious goal of being completed in this summer for Phase 4. A bulk of the work did get done. We also reminded the public and a reminder to council that this was our largest construction season ever in the city's history. So to see some projects not complete, in my opinion, isn't surprising, but I just wanted to remind those of that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mayor Clayton, any other questions? Okay. We will now move on to item 3.2, Director's Service Area Report. Director Glavin, please.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. We'll start off with economic development, and we have a relatively large update today, just with the gap between the two councils. So we'll start off with the Invest Grande Prairie launch. As many of you attended, Economic Development launched a new website in their new space at Centre 2000, which was attended by a number of councillors, as well as MP Chris Workington, the Economic Development Advisory Board, the Chamber Board, and a number of members of administration. As well, the Economic Development Manager attended the Provincial Roundtable on Rural Economic Development with Associate Minister Nate Horner. For business outreach, our Business Retention Expansion Coordinator has been reaching out to local businesses and has contacted 70 businesses over the last few weeks with 50 surveys completed, and is generally hearing an increased sense of optimism among businesses. As well, we had 12 new businesses open in October, and we've sent out congratulations emails and cards to all of those. With the Chamber Award winners, Economic Development and the Mayor's Office dropped off a number of congratulations cards to city-based winners of the Chamber Awards of Excellence. Our Economic Development Recovery Grant Program has issued a significant amount of money and to a number of projects over the last year. The beautification and patio grant has approved 25 applications worth $328,000. The local marketing grant has had 47 applications for $117,000. The training grant has had 27 applicants for $28,000. The barrier-free grant has had 2 applications for $10,000. As well, we also have the municipal fee grant, which we have so far had 1 application for $2,800. The business revitalization grant has had 1 application and has 1 pending for $7,300. And the downtown incentives program that's been in operation for a number of years has issued 2 demolition grants for over $15,000, 2 patio grants for over $5,000, and 4 facade improvement grants for $86,000. Moving on to energy and environment. In environment, an RFP has recently gone out for the city's procurement of both electricity and natural gas. Some of you may or may not be aware of the combined heat and power project at the Eastlink Center that was installed earlier this year. The installer didn't quite meet the noise regulations in the area. We have now brought it under within tolerance, so it's within the threshold of sound that's allowable there. However, we're also doing some more work to try and mitigate some of the sound that's coming from the high pressure gas lines that's also creating a little bit of a sound that isn't pleasant if you're too close to it, but we are within regulations there. For engagement, Environment did our first engagement since COVID in person with a vermicomposting session that they did with the Montessori school, and the students were very excited to have somebody come into the classroom. In engineering services, as was alluded to earlier, this was a fairly big year for capital, our biggest year, and a fairly long report with some stats here, but just to give some context to what was done, we replaced 6.7 kilometers of sidewalks, 3.7 kilometers of trails, added about 1 kilometer of trails, rehabilitated over 23 kilometers of road, replaced 26 traffic signals, added 44 pedestrian crossing signals, replaced 273 manholes, replaced 21 kilometers of storm pipe, and rehabbed 6 storm outfalls, and built 1 new pedestrian bridge. For projects that didn't get completed or are not yet fully completed this year, we just heard downtown phase 4 as well. We are doing a significant amount of work in the Smith subdivision on both Park Road and 92nd Avenue. The road will be completed, the utilities will be in, but there'll be landscaping that won't be completed this year that we will see that in the spring. In transportation, our season for snow clearing started October 31st, although we just got our first snow, but all the equipment is up and running and ready to go when we do need to put it out there. We had our sanders and salters out there yesterday. For traffic signals, as was alluded to earlier, we're just finishing up the installation of 11 rapid flashing crosswalks throughout the city at areas that were the highest priority for potential pedestrian incidents. And we should see all of that wrapped up by early December. In parks, our crews continue to focus on fall cleanup with pruning and mulching in areas that they have good access to before snow limits. As well, elm tree pruning in Jubilee Park is a high priority right now. We've started to deliver rinks to the neighborhoods for anybody who is in the rink program, and we hope to start flooding city rinks November 15th if weather allows. The Hillside Skate Park is currently being taken down and the pump track stored for the winter, and other pieces are going to the new rec center for the winter. And we anticipate putting Christmas decorations up November 15th. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you very much, Chair O'Connor, and thanks for the updates there, Director Glavin. Lots has happened in the last months since the election started. Just a question in regards to the CHP unit at Eastlink Centre. It's good to hear that we are getting the sound back into regulation. Have we followed up with the neighbors who were making the sound complaints and see how they're impacted in their backyards that abut against that CHP unit?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. I'd have to follow up to see when the last communications. I know we've had a lot of communications with that group, but I'm not sure if we've talked to them since the insulation was put on there. I can follow up.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next in the queue is Councillor Blackmore and then Mayor Clayton.
Thank you, Brian, for your report. That was quite an information dump. Can you send that out in a bullet form, bang, 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 so that we have it for reference? That would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Chair O'Connor. We always include that in the minutes of the meeting.
Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair O'Connor. Director Glavin, in regards to the CHP unit, there was some other work that was intended to be done this summer. Can you update on what got completed in regards to landscaping, the berm, potential fabric insulation, etc.?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. So we installed a number of trees and shrubs at the site. We intend to install more in the spring. For some of that is some very minor sound attenuation. Some of it's just visual obstruction, so you're not staring at that all the time. We installed sound absorption blankets all along the unit. We also enclosed the bottoms of the units as per the manufacturer of the CHP units. We are doing additional sound monitoring to see what things look like post mitigation, and our current ATCO is actually on site today with the high pressure gas line looking for options on how we can further insulate the gas line.
Thank you. Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair O'Connor. So then the pre-testing to the work that was done this summer and the post-testing for sound, there has been a decrease? And you said it was in, it's within the tolerable levels, but it has been decently, not significantly, but it has been a fair amount, has seen a decrease.
Yeah, thank you, Chair O'Connor. So the Alberta Utilities Commission sets the decibel level and the distance from any power generation unit that's allowable. We are below the threshold. However, we're talking, I think we were over 1.5 decibels roughly before. We are, I think, 2 decibels lower than we were before, so we're like 0.5 decibel over the limit. So when we do further sound attenuation with the high pressure gas line, we're anticipating that'll go down further. But to see it dramatic, like, when you're talking, 1 or 2 decibels, that might not even be perceptible to someone. So it's something we'll have to look at again to see whether or not we want to do further sound attenuation in that area.
Thank you.
Councillor Bressey.
Great, thank you. Speaking of the CHP unit, I know there were intentions to do a public, or maybe they were just hopes or ideas. I don't know if they were intentions, but there was talk of doing a public education piece inside the Eastlink Centre with how much power had been saved, what it was about, and help it show off what the city's doing in terms of environmental responsibility, but also how Alberta natural gas can be used much more responsibly. Is there still talk about doing that?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. Yes, I know that was part of the project. I'll follow up and see exactly where they were, but I know that the intent was to have a display inside so that people could see and understand what was occurring with the CHP.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Lehners.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mike. So I got a perspective here, Brian. So what kind of decibels were we at? And you say we've knocked down 2, which is pretty much, you would hardly even notice it. But still, if it was started out at 3 or 4, well then it was. Anyway, can you give me an idea of what kind of perspective or magnitude we're talking about here?
Yeah, just give me a minute here. I'll have to find it, and I can send out an email to committee and council here with the exact numbers. But I think we were talking 52, 53 down to 51-ish.
Okay. CEO Galante.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. Yeah, that is correct. Initial measurements of the decibel level was about 50, 51.5, 52 without any insulation. Then when the skirting on the bottom of the unit and the absorption blankets, I think we went back to 48 or so. And the limit is 50.5 on the AUC. So it's within regulation, difficult to to measure if it's perceived by the human ear, but we are within the AUC regulation now.
Thank you. For want of time, I would like to see that we move on. We have a very busy agenda today, so if we could move on to item 3.3 and presenter Chad Sheldon. Go ahead, Chad, please.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. Good morning, Mayor Clayton and Council. We've got two recommendations to speak to today. And those are that we recommend committee, these are in regards to Richmond Industrial Area revitalization. So the recommendations are that committee would endorse a draft terms of reference that has been developed for that project. And also that committee recommend to council to bring forward a funding request of $75,000 to the 2022 budget deliberations, just to support the Richmond revitalization strategy development. So for a little bit of background, because this goes back to a previous council direction on September 21st of 2021. And that was after a delegation of Richmond business owners had presented to council with a request that city help with a revitalization strategy. The direction at that time from council was they directed administration to work with landowners to develop a revitalization strategy and to bring that forward to a future standing committee. So since then, administration has formed a project team, so interdepartmental project team, including stakeholders from the Richmond business owners. And we've been meeting regularly with those stakeholders and have developed terms of reference to direct the project. So by asking for endorsement of this terms of reference, we're essentially asking council or committee today to confirm our plan of attack is meeting the intent of council. And if so, we'll continue to engage with stakeholders on determining the top priorities and developing short, medium, and long-term goals for consideration towards an overall revitalization strategy. And there's currently no funding for this project. So the budget consideration allows us to complete any information gathering, any activity that would be required for a comprehensive assessment would be what the funding would be required for. It is somewhat speculative at this point until we have broader stakeholder engagement. So once we've met with a larger group from Richmond and really focused in on the key priorities at that point, we'd have a better idea of the exact funding going towards which projects or which strategies. But we've made some reasonable assumptions that there will be some level of a revitalization area study, could be crime prevention through environmental design audits. Anyway, there's been a number of priorities that are mentioned by this stakeholder group, and so we're looking again for direction on the recommendation to endorse the terms of reference, but also to confirm any initial funding available to the project. So if there's any questions or comments, I'm happy to take those now.
Thank you, Mr. Sheldon. I appreciate that. There is a motion that could be put forward.
Sorry, just clarification, Councillor O'Connor, and I know everybody's getting used to the systems. In our eScribe app, there's actually a request to speak. and I see there are, including myself, there's 2 people in the queue. So if I can just ask council to use that option so that the chair isn't going back and forth between looking for raised hands as well as looking at the app. So it'll, just for council, it flashes on the top of your item that we're currently working on, and you just click it. It'll take a second to orientate, and then it puts you in the queue. Just because I'm the only one that has a screen when we have a council meeting that you can touch request to speak. So for this, for the chair, there's that opportunity. So if Councillor O'Connor, are you able to see that within your app?
Yes, I have that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. First in the queue is Grant Berg, then Dylan Bressey, and Gladys Blackmore.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sheldon. One of the things that I'm curious about is, again, I know some of the discussions have been around internet, lighting, security. One of the complaints that I've heard from business owners in the area is actually snow removal, which is more of a service rather than infrastructure. Is that something that's been discussed or considered?
Through the chair, yeah. Thanks, Councillor Berg. In the original stakeholder group we've been working with is about approximately 10 to 12 business owners. There's been a lot of back and forth, and that the only discussion around snow clearing actually was quite a positive one, in saying that it had improved dramatically over recent years. So that has not been a top priority at this point. Now, we do require much broader stakeholder engagement. So it is possible that that does come up, but the initial reaction, that has not been a top priority.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes Dylan Bressey.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Sheldon. Something I'm curious about is at a strategic level, we've got limited funds to invest into industrial areas, and I think the tough conversation for council is going to be, do we invest a whole bunch of money in Hughes Lake and not very much over in Richmond, or do we invest a lot in Richmond, not a lot in Hughes Lake, or do we split the pot? So if we undertake work to identify Richmond, how would timelines line up with what's going on in planning and discussions about Hughes Lake, and what kind of process would be used to make sure that we're looking at our industrial strategy holistically across the city, not just looking at these 2 developments separately and in their own buckets?
Right, through the chair. Very good question. So the timeline intended for this Richmond project has the overall in mind. What we'd look at is continued engagement with this group, broader stakeholder engagement over January, February of this year, so that we could complete an overall revitalization strategy to consider by June, so for 2023 budget deliberations. So at that point, council would have Hughes Lake to consider at the same time as Richmond.
Excellent, thank you.
The chair recognizes Gladys Blackmore.
It seems to me that the Richmond Industrial Park was built somewhere in the mid to late 70s, and so I'm wondering if revitalization is going to replace a lot of in-ground infrastructure. Is that where we're going to need to start, or is it something more superficial? I'm not sure what people are looking for, and I'm kind of curious about that.
Sure, through the chair. So the initial delegation that presented to council was really concerned more so with the above surface infrastructure. I think they believe they would leave that to the city. So that certainly has to be part of the analysis that that administration would go through in determining any revitalization. That would be part of the study that we would bring back. Any considerations that there would be.
Thank you. Any further requests to speak? Seeing none online or?
Sorry. Chair O'Connor, I was actually in the request to speak, not to let you know about this, but to actually contribute to the topic we're on. Thanks. Mr. Sheldon, so right now, the terms and reference are in front of us. We're looking to either approve those or amend those as well. The discussion on funding, the $75,000 going to the fall budget. In regards to that $75,000 amount, and I know we're not going to debate that here per se, it's just whether or not council wants to have that on the fall budget. Is the intent to hire a contractor to assess the needs in the Richmond Industrial Park, or what is that $75,000 going to be earmarked for?
Right, through the chair. So that is one consideration, but to be honest, it really is speculative at this point until we get broader stakeholder feedback. So the $75,000 amount did include consideration of potentially a consulting firm to do an overall review, but that has not been settled, I guess, per se. A lot of the conversation has been around crime prevention through environmental design and potential audits. There has been other discussions around just beautification. So we haven't landed on one specific strategy, but an outside study or consultant is one that would be under consideration.
If I can follow up, Councillor O'Connor, a question for Director Glavin. I know that this isn't the discussion we're looking to have today, but do we not have the capacity within your department to, at a higher level, determine the needs and what Richmond Industrial Park is looking for specifically without earmarking a sort of an amount of money that apparently doesn't seem to be tied to something specific?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. With this one, there's a bit of a timing issue just when it came to council and when was referred to administration to do the work, being it was the last meeting before the last council adjourned. So since then, we've been working with this group since last year, since they came forward with an idea of doing something as far as a revitalization strategy in the area. And there's a number of things that they're looking for us to analyze, being lighting levels, potential new transit routes, sidewalks, trails, marketing opportunities, and marketing not limited to, marketing the area, but putting signage up that would give better indication of businesses where they are within the park. There's also some discussion about punching through 112th Street across the tracks, which is not as easily said, not as easily done with some of the track configuration that's over there right now. So the reason why it's coming forward is $75,000 without exact studies attached to it is just because we're not quite sure what it would be based on some previous work that is similar to this. 75,000 seemed like a reasonable estimate of what it might take to do it. And what we wanted to bring forward was something so that we didn't start working with them and identify that we needed to do something and then not have any money or have to come back to council in February or March of next year, or have to, limit work on a different project that council did approve in order to do this one. And that's essentially why we're coming forward with the referral to budget for $75,000.
So if I may, Chair O'Connor, I guess my concern, Director Glavin, is that it's $75,000 to do what? You listed a lot of opportunities there and things that could need to be done. If we come forward and determine through this working group that, the needs are $2 million, what was the point of earmarking $75,000? So it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg for me. I absolutely believe that there are needs in the Richmond Industrial Park for revitalization. Fully support that. It's the $75,000 amount just being earmarked on our budget for discussion that's concerned to me, without knowing fully what's needed or desired from the industrial park itself. I guess my question is, how soon if you earmark the $75,000 to the budget, which is in reality less than a month away, what will the debate be on? It'll be on funding $75,000 and wait to come back, see a report come back, and then the report will actually clarify the needs financially?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. I suppose I would frame it maybe more similar to when the downtown revitalization was being contemplated, where we hired a consultant to work through with focus groups, city administration, and stakeholders, come up with a plan for how we would do the phasing of downtown, what it would look like. That would be the most similar thing we've done recently on this, where that plan didn't commit us to do any capital work. That still always a council discussion. This would be the same as that, in that if there was any capital identified, so for example, if we identified 2 kilometers of sidewalk that would really benefit that area, that would be a budget decision for 2023 that might come out of the revitalization strategy, but we wouldn't be committing, the revitalization strategy is not committing us to any capital. What it's doing is coming up with some of the things that may address the concerns of that area, based on the feedback we get, the expert advice we get, potentially through a study that we use that $75,000 for. Something else that did come up was around crime prevention through environmental design audits. We've been working with the RCMP to look at that area. We had our crime analyst meet with the Richmond group to go over some of the activities in that area, what some of the causes were, things that they could do to mitigate it. Some of it is environmental design related, that improvements could be done to reduce the opportunities for crime to occur. Some of this money could be used to do some of that work in order to assess some of the different properties in there, or give some training to the different business owners. And that would be just something we could do in the short term to give some immediate relief to business owners by giving them the tools they need to reduce crime. So I recognize this is a little bit nebulous at this point, because the revitalization strategy is just beginning. There's nothing concrete I can give you right now, aside from that.
Okay, thank you.
The chair recognizes Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, through the chair. This is kind of in line with Mayor Clayton's question. Is it typical or reasonable to believe that $75,000 would cover consultants and administration costs to evaluate such a assessment?
Thank you, Chair.
Just saying that only because through previous assessments and development strategies, it was exceptionally higher.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. The intent is that staff are going to be doing most of the work here. So we don't account for their salaries as part of the project through a budget ask to council like we're doing here. The $75,000 we're identifying is potential to be used for external consultants. So by not having them do all of the work, conduct all of the engagement sessions, because that's usually where a significant amount of money gets chewed through. If you have consultants coordinating everything, doing all of the work, in this case, we're doing all the work, and we may identify a need for a consultant. The $75,000 in some likelihood won't completely get used, or may not get completely used. But anytime you're doing engagement, typically we have open houses that we do that need a venue or need supplies for. So some of it will be necessary. If theoretically, if the $75,000 doesn't get approved, we'll still do the project. We just may have to come back and say we're not going to do something, or we just do less of something.
Thank you. Councillor Blackmore.
Yes, if the chair pleases, I would be happy to make a motion at this point.
Yes, we had someone else in the queue. Mayor Clayton, did you want to get in before?
I'll wait and see the motion. Thanks.
Thank you. The motion is in order.
Oh, sorry, which motion?
Very nice. The motion on the floor is 1, endorse the staff terms of reference, a TOR, on as presented, and number 2.
Sorry, Chair
Gladys, would you be able
Councillor
to read
Black,
that?
yeah.
Thank you.
I would be delighted to do that, Mr. Chair. I move that Council endorse the draft terms of reference as presented and that we bring forward a funding request of $75,000 to the 2022 budget deliberations to support the Richmond Revitalization Strategy development.
Okay. That motion is in order, and I repeat, it's number 1, endorse the draft terms of reference, TOR, as presented, and 2, recommend Council bring forward a funding request of $75,000 to the 2022 budget deliberations to support the Richmond Revitalization Strategy development. And we are going to vote.
Nope, sorry, I'm in the queue. Yes, thanks. To the motion, question for Director Glavin. How would this plan differ from an area redevelopment plan?
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. In redevelopment plans, it's usually focusing on land use. In this case, we're not. That's not what they're asking for. So they're not looking to take a lot of the land. So most of the land in there is zoned industrial general. There's a bit of industrial business. There's some commercial arterial along 100th Avenue where you have Costco and the hotels. What we're seeing right now is not land use issues, and that's not what they're hoping to change. There may come out of this revitalization strategy that does get identified as something that maybe is a one-off in here that we don't need a redevelopment plan for, but maybe there's an application for rezoning that comes forward at some point. But the main difference here is that there's no zoning involved.
So on an area redevelopment plan such as the one we just finished in College Park, did we fund additional dollars to this, or was it just dealt with internally? I can't recall.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. Yes, we do fund for planning studies annually for our statutory plan reviews, as many of them do have a sunset where every 10 years they're supposed to be reviewed. In this case, with College Park, I think it was 20 years since it was adopted. And yes, we do budget for them. I think that one was in the realm of $50,000+. However, we did a lot of the work internally. If we would have completely subcontracted that work out, it probably would have been 100-ish.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Thank you. And a motion on the floor. I hope you don't want me to repeat it a third time. So thank you, Ms. Karbaszewski. So you will be asked to vote. Please vote. The vote passed unanimously. Thank you, Director Sheldon, Sheldon and Director Glavin. Thank you. There is no correspondence. Well, on item 4, is there, I see no other business. Item 5, and bylaw number 6, bylaw and policy review. I assume that they're Director Glavin, there is nothing on policy review. And outstanding items list number 7.
Thank you, Chair O'Connor. There's no updates today on this. However, I will run through them very briefly, as this council was not the ones to refer these to the outstanding items list. So the Richmond Industrial Park Revitalization Strategy you heard about today from Chad Sheldon. Pathway, so item 1158, pathway between 72nd Avenue and 68th Avenue. This is where we had a slope failure in the spring where part of the trail collapsed into the creek. We are currently assessing some of the risks and the stability on that trail with the intent of relocating the trail further to the west at some point. We'll be bringing a report back probably sooner than the current date on there, but there's some unknowns currently. Item 1151, snow and ice control policy. We're currently working on a review of our policy as well as the policies of similar communities anywhere. So we're not limiting it to Canada, but looking at potentially Scandinavian countries as well that may have similar traits. And we're expecting to have something in front of this council before June of next year. We might bring a preliminary report back within the next couple months to make sure we're on the right track. 1163 Wapiti House site. We had a delegation come forward with some concerns on the Wapiti House site, which is the former Rotary House. In there, they were concerned about some of the stormwater management in the area, the potential for constructing a new fence, as well. They were hoping or looking for the site access to be relocated to the south side of the building. So we'll be bringing back a report on that within the next 2 to 3 months here.
Thank you, Director Glavin. Now, if there is nothing else, I would.
We need a motion on the outstanding items list, please.
A motion on?
To receive or?
Okay. We need a motion to adopt that report. Mayor Clayton?
I'm happy to move the, to receive the outstanding items list as presented, or as amended. Thank you.
Okay, we don't have to vote on that? Yes, we do. See? Don't. Yeah. We will call the question. Carried unanimously. We need to move to adjourn. How long a break? 5 minutes?